Guys, welcome to week 5. We're almost done. This week we are going to talk about logarithms. Um, Logarithms sound really intimidating, and they look really intimidating, but they really are not as long as you understand what they are. All a logarithm is, um, defined mathematically, is the inverse operation of an exponent. So, since pre-algebra, since 7th grade math, when you solve an equation that has a variable in it, all you do is you use the inverse operation. If you have x plus 2 equals 8, plus, what's the inverse operation of plus? It's minus, so I subtract 2 from both sides and I get x equals 6, right? If I'm multiplying, 2x equals 8. 2x means I'm multiplying. The inverse operation of multiplication is division. So I would divide 2 on both sides and get x equals 4. Okay? Well, last week we talked about exponential functions. In order to solve an exponential function, whenever you have something like 3 to the x equals 81, you have to be able to do an inverse operation in order to solve it. Now, most of the time, on those easy questions, you can look at it. Even back when you were in pre-algebra or algebra 1, when you saw 2x equals 8, you recognized that 2 times 4 equaled 8 and that x equaled 4. So a lot of these logarithm problems that I'm giving you today, you will be able to recognize them pretty straightforward. From the very beginning, you'll be able to recognize, oh, I know that 2 to the 4th power is 16. Or you can multiply that out pretty easily. So these are not difficult problems, but I want you to understand the basic concept of what a logarithm is. Applications of logarithms are limitless. Most things that have to do with upper level computers, including game design, any IT, software, hardware, programming, anything like that is going to involve logarithms. And so it's a very important concept, and it's a concept that a lot of people make way more difficult than it has to be. All it is it's writing an exponential equation in a different way where you no longer have any exponents. Okay, so I've written down the basic way to go back and forth. And the first 5 problems on your homework for this week are simply writing, it gives you an exponential function, and all you have to do is write it as the logarithm based on that equation. So here's the basic format for an exponential function right here. If I have a base, a number, b, raised to the x power, it equals a number. Okay, so let's do an example, an easy example that we know. Let's just say 2 cubed. What is 2 cubed? 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So 2 cubed is 8, right? Pretty simple. Now, this is an exponential function. We can write this same equation as a logarithm. And all we do is replace the letters that I have here. You'll notice in here I have a b, an x, and an n. In the same way, with my logarithm, I have a b, and x, and an n. Okay, so all I do is I switch the places of the numbers with a logarithm at the beginning. So I can write 2 cubed equals 8 as a logarithm by saying the log base 2. Okay, that's how we say a logarithm, base 2, because the base of the exponent was 2, of 8 is 3. Okay, all I'm doing is I'm changing the order of things around. Okay, so 2 cubed equals 8, written as a logarithm, is log base 2 of 8 equals 3. All this is saying is whatever number that I raise 2 to this power gives me this answer. That's how you write a logarithm. Okay, and now we don't have any exponents. And we can actually write this and type this into our calculator and get the answer really quickly, which I'll go over a little bit later. Okay, now your homework says don't use a calculator, but I do want you to be exposed to how to type it into the calculator. The problems are, like I said, are really, really simple. You shouldn't need a calculator. But eventually, especially those of you guys that are going into pre-AP Cap Trig next year or PCLC next year, you're going to have to do far more complicated logarithms in that class, and I want you to be able to enter them in the calculator so that you can do that. There's also sometimes some log questions on the ACT, so I want you to be able to know how to enter those things in so that you can get a correct answer. All right, so let's look at another one. Let's look at number one. I'll do number one on the homework for you. Okay, number one says write 3 to the 8th equals 6,561 as a logarithm. Okay, so again, I have b to the x equals a number n. Okay, and when I rewrite that as a logarithm, I simply replace the b as the base of the logarithm. So I write log base 3, because the base of the exponential function was 3, of the answer of the problem of 6561 equals 8. Okay? Now, I'm going to walk you through how to do that on the calculator on your Chromebook. I have my Chromebook pulled up right here, and I also have, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but I will walk you through it with the buttons just so that you can hopefully see how I did it. All right? Now, the log base button on your calculator is the same place that the fraction button is. So you already know where it is. So what you do is you hit alpha y equals on your calculator, and it brings up the fraction where it says n over d and u n over d and n over d to u n over d, all that kind of stuff, where it says fraction. Now you'll notice there's not a logarithm right there in that menu, but you'll notice there are several others. There's also a matrix where we could, this is also where we could enter matrices whenever we were doing matrices back in systems of equations. So the logarithm is actually in the function menu, which is 1 to the right. And you'll notice it has an absolute value, a summation, a derivative, an integral, and then number 5 in this menu. And I know you can't see it because there's a glare on my computer screen, but number 5 on this is log base parentheses. Okay, so when I hit enter on log base parentheses, you'll notice that it gives me log, and then it has a little square where my base is going to go, and then a square in parentheses. Okay, so this is when I'm given a logarithm without an answer. This will give me the answer. So let's do that last problem. We had 3 to the 8th equals 6561. So let's enter that as a logarithm. So I'm going to do log base 3 of 6561. Okay, so I just enter log base. I type 3 into the bottom box and then hit the right arrow to get to the next box, and then type in 6561 and then hit enter. And my calculator pops up the answer of 8, which is exactly how I had written this logarithm because we had already been given the answer. Okay, so that's how you enter logarithms into the calculator to find the answers. Now, a couple of things that we need to know and understand about logarithms. Sometimes you will be given a problem that just says log of 1,000. Okay, so let's talk about what this means. If I'm given the problem log of 1,000, this is known as the standard log. Okay, anytime I'm given a logarithm that does not have a written base, it means it's understood that the base is 10. Okay, so log of 1,000, if I'm given that problem, means the same thing as log base 10 of 1,000. So what this is asking is 10 to what power gives me 1,000? How many times do I multiply 10 by itself to give me 1,000? And the easiest way to do these types of questions is how many zeros does it have in it? If there's a 1 in front of it, then there's 3 zeros, so 10 times 10 times 10 equals 1,000. So the log base 10, or the standard log of 1,000, like this, is 3. So anytime you're given a problem that just says log of a number, you're going to be able to do that. Now, there is a log button on your calculator that is the standard log. It is right next to the 7 button on your calculator. Now, remember, Do not, if you have a base that is not 10, do not use that button. It will give you a wrong answer because that's saying a log base 10. If your logarithm has a base of 3 and you're typing in a log of a base of a 10, you're going to get a very different answer because you're saying 10 to what power equals this number instead of 3 to what power equals this number. Okay, so that's how that works. You'll notice, and the easy way to remember that, you'll notice in the little bitty blue type in the top left corner of that button, it says 10 to the x. Because second log says I can just do 10 to the x power, gives me a certain number. It's the inverse of the logarithm. The last type of logarithm we need to talk about is something that we actually need to address. There was a problem on the assignment from last week that I didn't really go over very well, so I want to address a concept called Euler's number. Now, Euler is not spelled O-I-L-E-R like you would assume. It's actually the name of a mathematician that came up with a number, and it is spelled this way. Euler's number. E-U-L-E-R apostrophe S. Okay, there was a mathematician named Euler. He came up with an irrational number, which, remember, an irrational number is a number that has an infinite number of decimals. It never repeats. It never ends. Okay, so Euler's number is a mathematical number that is naturally occurring in a lot of things. It's the number that is used for continual compounding interest. If you remember back last week, there was a problem that wanted to compare a savings account that compounded continuously compared to compounding, I think it was like quarterly or monthly or something like that. And there were two different equations for that. You have to use Euler's number to do continuous compounding exponents. And what that is it's usually shown as little e to the x. Little e is Euler's number in mathematics. Okay? Now, when I have a problem that has Euler's number, where we're talking about continual compounding interest or something like that, there is a logarithm that is called the natural log. This is a naturally occurring number, so the natural log is called ln. Okay? And you'll notice right next to the 4 button on your calculator, you see ln. That's the natural log button. So anytime I have something like this and I want to find out, let's say I'm given a problem on the ACT where it says e to the x equals 417, let's say. Okay, that's just a random number I picked out of the air. I can hit on my calculator because the ln, basically this is saying, natural log is saying a log base e of my number 417 equals x. Okay, so if I want to find out what the natural log, what x is, what e to what power gives me 417, I simply click on L of n, the button right next to the 4 button on my calculator of 417, and then hit enter. And it gives me x equals 6.03. So Euler's number raised to it's actually 6.033086222. Okay, so, but I can round that. So Euler's number raised to the 6.03 power gives me 417. Okay, so that is how we use that. There were some questions last week, and I believe Braden Stedham asked me a question, and then my son had a little bit of an accident, and I wasn't able to address that question. So I wanted to address that on this video because we're going to use the natural log button. And you'll notice if you look in the top left corner of the natural log button on your calculator, you see e to the x. So you can actually calculate Euler's number raised to a power by hitting second ln, and which is second in the button right next to the 4 on your calculator, and it will calculate Euler's number raised to a power. Or you can use the logarithm to find out what exponent you want. Okay, so basic rundown. The homework. the first 5 problems. All you're doing is you're rewriting exponential problems, exponential functions, as logarithms. So you're going from b to the x equals a number to log base b of the number equals the exponent. Okay, that's all you're doing on the first 5 problems. So really straightforward. Number 6 through 10, you're going backwards. It gives you the logarithm, and you're going to write it as an exponent. Okay, so number 1 says log base 9 of 59049 equals 5. So you would write that 9 to the 5th power equals 59,049. Okay, you're just rewriting the equation from exponential form into logarithmic form. Okay, and then the last few problems, 11 through I think 16 or 11 through 15. It says evaluate the expressions without using a calculator. So basically it gives you the logarithm, like the first one is log base 3 of 81. Basically what that's asking you is 3 to what power, what exponent gives me 81. So how many times are you going to multiply 3 by itself to give me 81? Well, I can do that on my head. 3 times 3 is 9, so that's 3 squared is 9. Okay, 9 times 3, so 3 cubed is 27. And then 27 times 3 is 81. So the log base 3 of 81 is 4, because 3 to the 4th power would give me 81. So that's how you do logarithms. You simply break down the base raised how many times is going to give me the number that's next to my logarithm. Okay? Now, I'm not going to do a Google Hangout this afternoon. Haven't had a whole lot of people. Actually, I haven't had anybody that has really needed any help on Mondays. So I'm not going to do a Hangout today, but I will do a Hangout on Wednesday at 2 o'clock. And I'll send out an email with that link on Wednesday morning to remind you of that, so that you can have some extra help if you get stuck on these. Should be pretty straightforward. Next week's assignment is going to be the same thing, logarithms, but it's going to be some real world problems, some word problems that have to do with logarithms. So we're going to have some practice of entering these things on the calculator and that kind of stuff. Okay? Hope you guys are having a great quarantine. Hope you guys are excited that things are starting to open back up. Hopefully people will be safe, people will be smart, and continue to get better and see this pandemic end sooner rather than later. Love you guys. See you later.